Three very basic rules that I follow when I'm turning, and I learned it from Lyle, and basically the ABCs of turning: anchor, bevel, cut. So you want your anchor point somewhere on your body, if at all possible, and also on the tool rest. And then you want set your bevel in the direction that it's going to travel. Wherever that bevel is pointing, it's going to want to naturally go. So you're in your anchor, you get your bevel set, and with a bowl gouge, normally it's a 45 degree, when you're doing hollowing of the bowl or doing the outside. Normally you want that open to a 45 degree. I'm going to do a pull cut on this just to true this up. I could do it with a skew, which actually I'll do both. I think any tool that works for you is indispensable. Doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if it's a scraper. I don't care if it's a screwdriver with a sharpened point. You can turn with it, and it works for you. Turn with it. Let's bring this guy up. But I do find myself, and I've learned a lot of things from production, doing some production work and talking to production turners. That's helped me a lot just in regular turning, period. And help me help visualize how things are coming out of a piece of lumber, or even how to speed the process up. I'm a big fan of, and this is probably another reason why I'm so attracted to turning, I'm a big fan of instant gratification. I'm a human being, I can't help it. So if I can speed that up on the lathe, and it's already pretty fast. You guys have turned. Anybody here turned before? No? Okay. So you get it when you turn. You see the form. I look at things a little bit different than a lot of people. I don't consider this to be a blank. I don't consider it to be anything other than a piece of lumber until I put form to it. Then it's a blank. We are kind of good. One thing I did learn about skews is that wood does want you to go a certain direction a lot of time with the skew. And if you're getting tear out one direction, which that's some pretty good shavings actually, then reverse your direction and go the other direction with the skew. So that's not a bad surface. I am not going to worry about that. I also, when I'm turning, I pay attention to what the wood's doing and what's coming out in the wood. I can see I've got a bark inclusion there. I don't care right now because that's going to disappear. I'm not worried about any cracking because that whole piece is going to be turned off. But I'm always trying to pay attention to what's happening to the wood because, life can change in a split second. And I'd rather it be a happy accident than a catastrophic design change. So anyway, well, let's do this with the bowl gouge too. I also really like, I really try to figure out all the purposes that I can use for a tool, because I don't like unitaskers. I don't want to have a whole bunch of tools sitting on the end of the lathe and I have to pick this one up to do one thing, and this thing to do another one, and this one to do another one. I want to do multitaskers. And the bowl gouge can do basically 4 cuts: push, pull, scrape, shear, scrape. And I'm just going to do a full cut, and it's basically the same action as a skew. I've got it anchored to my body, I've got it anchored to the tool rest, and I'm just shifting my weight so that I don't change the angle of the cutting surface. And I get the same thing as a skew. Skew is indispensable for certain things, I have to admit, on spindle turning. And I think that it is an excellent tool to learn on, although it can be kind of frightening when you start. But if you get the skew under your belt, the skew is a very versatile tool too. All right, so one of the things, I learned this from Mark Gardner, and this changed the way I use spindle gouges for the rest of my life. When I started doing spindle gouge, working with a spindle gouge, it was pushing the tool and all that stuff. And Mark Gardner, when I took classes with him, he said, no, this is how you use a spindle gouge. And basically, when I want to know where my end cut is. And in this case, it's going to be about center. So I set my tool to where the end cup is going to be, where I expect it to be. And I expect it to be with the flute all the way closed and ending there. Then I know I've got to start my cut over here. So that means I've got to rotate my hand. And I got to drop the tool handle. So I do that, and once I get this started and I get that cut started, all I do is raise the handle. And if you watch my hand, you see what it naturally does. It wants to go back to neutral. This is an uncomfortable position. This is comfortable. So I'm not turning anything. I'm only lifting the handle, and that's where I expect my end cut to be. So it makes cutting with the spindle guide a whole lot easier than I used to do it. And it really speeds things up for me. And one of the very first things that I always look for when I'm working with a piece is form. Form is everything. Form is the canvas that you start with. So I want to have my form as finished as possible because it also helps me visualize when I'm going to hollow what line I'm following. So I want to get my form finished and started before I get too far, because once I start hollowing, I can't go back. Now I'm just pushing with my thumb. It's really, really light pressure just to keep the tool moving, but it's kind of self-feeding. That's not quite the pan I want. We'll have to adjust. This is a process that I learned with taking some instruction from Eric Lundquist, who's a turner in Colorado. He does a lot of his turnings with honed tools. He'll even use a skew, and he'll hone it, and then he'll take a steel and raise a burr on it to use it as a scraper sometimes. I use a piece of old 320, more or less emery cloth. You can't really feel any grit to it, but it's still electrostatically bonded in there. And then I have a piece of leather that I back it up with. And then what I do is I'll hone, and the leather helps me match the inside curve of the flute here on the tool. And I'll just push that down in there until it makes contact on all sides. And I'll run it out twice. And then I take a fine diamond card and I'll hone the outside, and it's just finger pressure. It's hardly anything. But what I'm doing is I've pushed the burr out of the flute and taken some of it off with what's left on that 320 emery cloth. And then I'm recreating the burr. When I want to see if you all come up here, you can see this line. It's right up there on the cutting surface. I want to see that line all the way across. If you get it in the sunlight just right, you'll see a little hairline all the way on the edge of that cutting edge. And that's what I'm looking for, because it's hard to talk about and describe what people get in their heads. What seems to sink in people's heads is rubbing the bevel, but I'm not doing that. I'm actually floating it. What I'm writing on is that cutting edge. That's what I'm writing on. And really, whenever you're putting and you're getting a really good clean cut, that's what you're doing too. You're not riding a bevel. But it's the best way to explain what's actually happening, because people see all this. It's not a micro bevel. All I've done is just take the burr back up over the top, but now it's finer and thicker. It means I don't have to sharpen as often. So basically, it's the same thing. You get your bevel set, but it's the cutting edge that doesn't work. So you see, I'm on my bevel. I'm riding the bevel right now. I'm making no cut. I just have to lift it up to get that cutting edge started. Now I've got to cut. So I've got to adjust my piece here. That might look good. And I'm kind of a perfectionist, I guess. I want the best cut. I'm always looking for the best cut I can possibly get. Because if I'm sanding, I'm not turning. But I'd rather turn. Pretty good. Now I'm at the point where I can do, now I consider that I've got a blank. Now I've got a blank to work with. And it's going to be a hollow form, clearly. But what I've done is I've given myself the lip of the jar, the hollow form, and then the hollow form itself. I just got to straighten this up a little bit, and I'm ready to go to do either outside work and then hollowing. So that'll be another 2 or 3 minutes maybe. I'm really not using, I hate getting beat up on the lathe, and literally everything that I'm doing is making sure that all the forces are going down into the tool rest. I don't have to try to fight the wood. This is all fingertip pressure, it's all finesse. Once you get the cut started, it's not going to take a whole lot to keep it going. Fairly clean. Usually what I do at this point, because it's me, and I'll finish this collar here real quick. But usually what I do is I'll get to this point and then I'll hit it with 220 just to see what the grain is, and I want to leave as interesting. I want to leave as few tool marks as possible at the get-go, and I'm actually there, so I'm going to finish this collar really quick. Sun behind me. I don't know if nope, it's off again. Off again. Oh, there it is. There it is. That's a little bit. I'm one of those people that complains that there's never enough light. So now what I'm creating here, this is a 50-degree gouge. This is also a 50-degree gouge. Same, it's a spindle gouge the same, but I've taken the heel off of it. And it just lets me get a little bit tighter area to complete a cut. So there's my collar. So at this point, like I say, normally I hit it with 220 really quick, which I'll do. And then I'll figure out what I'm going to do to the outside. And on this case, I'm going to bead the outside. So let's take care of this real quick. So what I love about short tools, sanding time is really quick. And I'm really not using much pressure on the sandpaper either. So if you definitely want to learn how to sharpen your tools. Not only will they last longer, but the cutting process will be a whole lot more fun. That's good enough for me. Let's see what surface we got. It's really smooth. So I'm going to bead the outside of the surface of this guy. And I'm like probably most of you, when I learned to bead, and this is a bead, so I would learn to bead from the top center down one side and the top center down the other way. And that takes a lot of time. It takes too much time. I'm impatient. And again, I'm always trying to figure out what the tools can do. So I don't know. I did not see Richard Raffin do this part. I honestly cannot remember who I actually saw do this. It was on Instagram, so it was a video. And I replayed that video about 25 times to figure out how this guy did this. And then I went and practiced and tried to figure it out myself because nobody taught me this. And now I understand it's starting to become really common. So anyway, I'm going to do a continuous bead all the way down. Yeah, let's bead the upper third of that. And I do my beads in one direction. And if we look at the tool rest as the hands on the clock, right, it would be 9 and 3, right? So 3:45 or 9:15, depending on what side of the clock you want to be on. So at 3 o'clock, I want my flute to be closed. And at 12 o'clock, I want my flute to be all the way open, right? So it's 12, 1, 2, 3. If you go the other direction, it's 12, 11, 10, 9. Does that make sense to you all? Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm starting off a bead, and then I'll open that tool back. Sorry? Oh, I'll move that tool back up to the curve to where I'm actually doing a shear scrape up over the side of the bead. And I'll open that flute up to about 1 o'clock. And I'll bring it up over the bead, and then I'll slowly close that back down to 3. So then I'm doing an actual push cut on the downhill side. And it doesn't matter which direction you go. And the other cool thing is you're never going to be at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're always ever going to be at 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 because you're above the tool rest. So it looks something like this. And that's how I do it now because it takes almost no time. It takes a lot of practice, and you got to be willing to make mistakes. I'm going to go the other direction and put these beads up. I'm going to go really slow, okay, so you guys can see this. Besides, I want to blend that. That's a little too sharp. I want to keep this shoulder flowing down in, so I'm going to blend that in and just do, a regular bead cut, sort of. Drop it right down in there. You see I'm at my end cut, my thumb's right at top. All I had to do was lift. That's all I had to do. So it's like a seesaw action. Down at 3, I'm going to open up to about 1, and I'm doing a shear scrape right there. Still getting shavings. And then once I've reached the middle point, I close the flute back down again, down to 3. Now, the biggest trick to this is remembering that when you're turning beads on a surface, your handle has to be 90 degrees to the surface that you're working at. I'm working on a curve. So that means that as I go around, my handle's got to move, which means that I got to move. I got to move to keep that anchor there. So if I start down on this one, clean that up, it's a shear scrape up to the top, we're going to hit the center and then drop back down and right in there. And that's what it looks like in super slow-mo. on that end. And let's take the other guy because it's a little bit tighter. And we'll just make that a bead too. Why not? And so what that does for me, like I'll do honey pots. I'm starting to do a lot of honey pots now. So I can bead the whole outside of the honey pot, make it look like the old style skep hives, if you guys know what those are. They were the woven grass hives that were kind of in a spiral, so they had, beads all the way up. So I'll bead the outside like that just because it's really fast. It's a production, it's a blend of production and regular turning. And I'm always trying to, like say, be the best turner I can be, and I want to help everybody else be good turners too. I mean, the only thing that's stopping you is practice. That's it. And then whatever, if you have any limits to your imagination.
You turn a pot out on the end of your piece of wood and then part it off and then turn another pot? Is that why it's so long, your piece of wood? For that?
Oh, for this piece, yeah. Actually, I normally do that. If I had that piece of maple, that would have been 3 or 4 honey pots in a row. And then I can just do 4 honey pots, part them off, hollow them out.
It's not a problem being that far away from the chuck to hollow it out?
No, normally I'm on a larger machine.
Okay.
And then when I part them off is when I hollow them out after. I'll part them off and then leave a tenon for the chuck, just enough to grab onto it, hollow it out, usually with a spindle
There's a
gouge.
limit as to how long you can be out there hollowing without a steady, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, vibration is the biggest enemy.
I noticed when you shut the lathe off, that piece of wood is tending to stop in the same place. Is it heavier on one side?
Well, I'm not sure if it's a reflection of the belt itself, because there it's not doing it. So I think it might be the belt and how that's reacting in there. But what I'm going to do with this piece, actually, on this one, I'll go ahead and part this off. I don't really need to, but I'll do it anyway, just in the interest of safety. Because it is a smaller lathe.
Yeah.
But that's how I do the outside bead. And actually, I'm going to clean that color up because I don't like it. So bear with me just a sec. And I'm going to do the same thing. It's just no different in my mind anyway. This is still a bead. Still a bead. That looks a lot better bead to me. A lot better bead. And I hear, there's really only 3 shapes you can turn: a curve, a straight line, and a V-cut. That's the only shapes you can turn. It's what you combine those into. So technically this is really a V-cut, but I've got it curved, so it's a combination of all those things. Alright, so that guy's done. Let's part him off. At least it's done as far as it's going to get right now. I want to hollow it out, and then I will.
Do you find that turning your bead with a gouge, you get a much better surface than using, say, a bead forming scraper?
I do.
You get a better, cleaner cut.
I really do. And I think that it is a fantastic tool, a bead scraper. I think they're fantastic. But I think you do a lot more sanding with that kind of stuff because it's a scraper. You're scraping. There's really, you can put a really nice burr and you can angle your scraper and get almost a shear scrape, which I do with some tools sometimes, and mitigate a lot of the sanding. But the bottom line is you're scraping that way. So yeah, you're going to have a little more sanding to do, depending on the wood. Sometimes the grain supports it. You don't have to do anything. Nothing wrong with that. If I can get away from sanding, I will. It is a must. I am one of those weirdos that doesn't like to part all the way through. Creating a tenon for myself really quick. Friends, I'm hoping to use the dovetail jaws. Oh, it worked. That worked. What? Oh.
Yeah, I figured it's gonna go right between us.
Are you and Catherine?
As a gentleman at all, I'd push her away, but
He figured I needed to take one out.
Oh, yeah. Slow down, Dave.
The chuck grabs the most when it's almost closed, where the jaw's almost touched. You have the most chuck jaw grabbing your wood.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good thing to pass on, too.
you
You got to work within the limits of what you're working with. So a chuck,
And if you're making a tenon,
that's the
on
best
end,
grip
then-
on a chuck, is the smallest tenon you can get on a chuck. Now you can change the jaws and get a larger tenon, and that changes how that works. But you want to have not very much space in between there if you can get away with it.
It grabs the best.
Yeah.
And if you're making a tenon on the end and you're gonna chuck it, make it small, the jaws won't be sticking out of the bottom of the chuck and crack you in the jaws. So you have a choice what size to make that.
And the way I usually set my tool rest height is I will set my handle parallel with the ways, and then where the point of the tool makes contact, I want it to be on center for this particular job. And the flute is all the way pointed up, all the way open. Let's see. Will that look okay? Yeah, once I fix that. So this is where you actually get to see, and this is kind of what's going to happen on the inside, but you actually get to see the cutting action of the spindle gouge when you operate it, in my opinion, like it should be operated. I know where my end cut's going to be. It's going to be with the flute closed and the cutting edge all the way down the point, right? I want to end on the center right there. Now all I'm going to do is lift the handle and give a little push with the finger. That's all I'm going to do. I got to start up high because it's a spindle gouge, and I need to start my cut, like everything else, down there on the bottom third of the tool towards the point. So start up high, I give it a little push, just raise the handle, and it cuts on the same surface, same spot every time, right there. If I have, well, I've got, you know what, we use this guy as a pointer because I don't seem to know how that works. Use this guy. So throughout that whole movement, I'm still staying in that very top third of the tool. So it is a slicing cut all the way down. I want to clean up this bead and make it round on the inside, so same thing, but I got to complete the bead, so I got to close the tool down again. That completes my bead. Now that I know that I'm also, and I'm talking about the bead of the collar itself, now I'm ready to hollow. And the way I start is I'll just drill a hole. Let's start up high here, get started right like that. And what I do like about deep fluted spindle gouges is you can see the shavings, all that stuff just pretty much feeds straight out. And that really helps with the hollowing too, because it means the shavings want to come out instead of getting gunged up in there. What I'm doing is I'm gauging my depth. Make a hole there so I know how deep I'm going, because I've only got so much lumber on the back end to work with. That looks good. Now I can start hollowing. With this.
There used to be a tool called a lamp auger.
Oh, what?
Drilled out lamps.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's basically what a lamp auger is.
Oh.
You push it straight in, it's a flute just like that.
Okay. I
Once
do.
it starts going straight, it cuts the straight.
Yeah. I do find sometimes I've got to jiggle the hand a little bit to get the cutting, because sometimes it'll stop cutting for whatever reason. And then that gets it to start again, and it'll just self-feed.
Hey, one thing you said that I'd like you to address.
Sure. Oh, yeah, and if there's any questions, just fire them out there, man. That's what
You
we're
said
here for.
this several times, you're gonna open it up. I'd like you to elaborate on that just a little, what you're talking about.
All right, let's go. Let's do it with a larger gouge, because we can see it better. All right, that's a smaller gouge. When we are, say, doing a bowl, right, on a bowl gouge, normally we want the flute open about 45 degrees. That also equates to about what, 1:32 o'clock-ish on the clock, right? But it's also only about half open. If the flute is totally facing the piece I'm turning, it's all the way closed. If the flute is pointed straight up, which is usually not a good idea, it's all the way open, and that's catch city. That's catch city. Even turning beads. So when I say I'm opening up the flute, that means I'm just exposing more of the flute to the air and less to the lumber that I'm turning. And then when I'm doing a bead, it's open, close, open, close, open, close.
Thank you.
Now with this, the hollowing that I'm going to be doing, and I better use this again because it's larger and easier to see. You might want a whole, is this in the image there? Cool. So when I'm hollowing the inside of this, I'm going to go straight in at an angle here. Well, it'll wind up being that way. I got to work my way to get that, open that up in there first. But then I'll be going straight in, which means I'm cutting with the back end of the wing. Once I get to a certain depth and I start making that round on the inside, that cut is going to move from there to the point, which is where I want it. And the tool itself, the cutting action, is going in a straight line. It's going at an angle from here to the back side. So as I'm traveling, it's starting to cut there, 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 there. Once I'm about halfway point, it's now on the point, and I'm doing a push cut. Here I'm doing really more of a scrape, but with the angle, and I've done this with, I tried several different angles. For me, 50 degrees on the gouge seems to work a whole lot better. 40 degrees is way too grabby, and a 60-degree gouge, the handle gets in the way because you got to get it up so high to get that cutting action on there. So for me, a 50-degree gouge seems to work the best. And I've tried this with bowl gouges, I've tried it with spindle gouges, and either way, 50 degrees is what I go with, just because it makes it a lot easier.
You're talking about back hollowing, right?
Yes, this is back hollowing.
And Richard Rafe has a video on this if you ever want. It's pretty good news.
So as I'm going in, I'm going straight in this way. I won't, right away, I got to open it up first, but once I get that opened up on the inside, I'll be going straight in this way. And I'll be cutting the top surface, not the bottom. All right, normally when we're coming around, we're cutting down here, down on this side. I'm cutting up on top. So it's going over the top of the tool and then back down around to the bottom as I'm gutting through, say gutting it out, I guess is, yeah. It's hunting season, right? That's a good metaphor. Anyway, so I'm hollowing it out that way. And you have to be very and this is another thing why I got this cup of water and why I keep this hole so small in the beginning, because I have an anchor here, but I desperately need an anchor in between here and where I'm cutting, and that side of that hole is what gives me that anchor. So as I'm cutting in, I'm rubbing, this whole tool shaft is rubbing on the side of the hole. This thing gets hot, so I'll dunk it every once in a while. And the cutting action too helps heat it up, but it's rubbing on that hole, and I'll open it up slowly as I get the inside more and more open because I have to get the reach. But in the very beginning, I start with a very, very small hole, the size of the tool. And I am going to double check, I'm sure I did, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because safety. And it's also not a process you should rush. Definitely not. And after some practice, I found that you can really feel how the tool is cutting and where it's cutting in there. And that kind of gives you the feel of it, because you can't see what you're doing. I have to visualize it in my head what's happening, because the tool's on the inside. I can't see it. Is that going to be deep enough? Yeah, it'll be fine. So I'm going in there to open it up. I'm cutting. I really am just cutting with that back third of that wing right now. Tool handle dropping. And I have to keep dropping the tool handle so I'm contacting the upper surface. Boy, that's rubbing really hard there. That's rubbing really hard. Smoke up there. The cool thing about this process is I can go back and forth. I'm rotating the tool handle with my hand a little bit, but I can go back and forth and just work on one area. I don't have to just go one direction. But you have to pay attention to what the flute is doing. You don't want it all the way open, and you don't want it all the way closed, because it'll catch in there. And when that does, you have a design change. And it could be catastrophic. It might be the best design change you ever made, I don't know, but it's still a design change. I'm going to cool that baby down. See where I got burned wood on the side. Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Not many, but I attributed that to the foundation, tool control and all that. But I did have some pretty catastrophic ones, yeah. Yeah, you do. You do. After you do a couple, you get to feel it, because you can feel it. You can feel the cut, even when you're doing an outside cut. You can feel when you get just the right cut. It's the same thing on the inside. It's just maintaining where that flute is actually pointed, because that's all kinds of catch city in there. It's all kinds.
Well, that's a gnarly piece of walnut. The grain's not all. If you were following it. Yeah, but I picked this one because it's great. So it looks like, watch my tool handle, it looks like I'm making, and then I am kind of making this arc, but it's the tool handle that's doing that. The tool cutter itself is going in a straight line. You will probably see a point or two right there. You can hear it. Right there.
catches, but they're not good cuts. Don't be afraid to start the cut over. That's what I was doing when I get that little thing. I'll come back a little bit and start the cut over. If you don't, you're gonna make it worse as you go. The vibration only gets worse from there. So don't be afraid to restart the cut. If you get a bad cut, start it over. So your piece is a ½ inch smaller. So what? It's better than that. A lot better than that. So I'm gonna take a look at this really quick. I don't expect that it's super thin yet. But we don't put our fingers into rotating things with small holes.
Not the ones we want to keep.
Not the ones we want to keep. Yeah, that's the key to it all. Whatever you want to keep stays on this side of the tool rest. And one thing that I learned from Matt Monaco, well, I guess it's been 2 weeks ago now, fist and swipe, not fingers. Fist, swipe, clean it off. That way your fingers aren't trying to venture into the other side of the tool rest. And well, here in a minute too, I'll double check my chuck again because I'm introducing vibration. The chucks do like to vibrate loose. I'm taking my time. I'm not trying to force it. This is really where finesse takes it. You have to feel for the cut. So I'm probably I think I'm gonna open that up a little bit now. Yeah, I'm gonna open that up a little bit now. But you can see right there on the tool, and maybe on the camera too, where it's been rubbing on this collar right there. But that anchor is absolutely essential. You need to have something that's because you've got an interplay of forces. The tool rest wants the tool to go one way, the rotating piece wants the tool to go the other way. So I got to have some kind of fulcrum in the middle to keep that steady. So this is not necessarily end grain. It sort of is, but sort of isn't. It was out of the crotch of a tree. So it makes more sense if I want to open this hole up that I cut from the other side of the lathe, so to speak. I could stand on that side and make the cut. And I just want to open it up a little bit. And that's another thing I really like to share too, man. Don't put your lathe against the wall. Because then you're cutting off half your access to the lathe. I have turned from this side. I've done platters where I can get right into that corner. I can do a push cut right into that side. I'm not violating any laws because I'm only cutting on the downhill side of the rotation. I'm still cutting in the same spot of the tool, but I can go this way. Now, if I reverse the lathe, I can go this way. But, you know, this is going to lift my tool up on this half as it rotates up and then as it rotates down. So I can still, as long as I go from center out, I can turn from this side of the lathe. So if you have the space, don't limit yourself, because sometimes getting to the other side of the lathe is what makes the difference. If you can't get your tool handle, or, you know, you don't have the dexterity, I mean, everybody's dexterity, and, you know, we're all getting older, right? So things tend to slowly fade away, feeling, you know, all that steadiness. So if you don't have the dexterity to be able to do what I just did, do it from the other side of the lathe, and that's just a push cut.
Do you have some sort of a way to index your handle so you know where the base is?
The flute?
Right, but is there some sort of a mark on your handle, a flat spot? Nothing?
No, I do actually have that on my parting tool, so I want to make sure that I've got the right side up. But no, and part of that is because of practice. Before I even go in there, I already know where my flute's going to be, and so I just automatically set my thumb right up there. It's a habit, but it's one I've tried to build. mostly because I can't see what's going on in there, and also partially because this is almost at the end of its life. So that flute's going to disappear for me really quick once it's in there. Before I even start, I get everything set. And then I feel for the cut, and then I can start going back and forth. And if I've got, yes I do, a little flashlight. Let's see if I can. Hey, not bad. Groovy. That's a woodturning joke, groovy. No. So now that the hole's open a little more, I can now drop my hand a little more, which means I can get further on the inside in. I still gotta set my, you see I just did it just there. I've got my flute already set, my finger's right there, it's just habit. I'm gonna rotate down, that was a bad cut. That was a bad cut. Afraid to start over. So you can hear the sound of us getting a little thin. Or getting thinner, I should say. No, I don't mean getting a little thin like we're getting too thin, but that we're getting thinner. You're gonna hear the screech. Let's do this. Does this have... So the bottom, don't pay attention to the bottom because we're not there yet, but the sides and all that.
Huh?
Really clean.